Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and we are doing our checking in and doing a little coding on stream thing again. For what looks to be an hour and 40 minutes or something like that, I'm going to try to wind up more exactly at 5 this time, as I will have tacos this time. And hi to Alex, AlphaSync, and Lutz. And check it out, I have show and tell. I got all of this, and it might take up a lot of space, which it does. And I've got this thing up here. It says if aspect ratio is larger or equal to 0 and less than 1.4, or larger than 1.4, you might well wonder, what's that about? What's that doing? And this is part of the plan, and I have a neat little thing to show you. Check this out. I can open up Twisted Wave and a piece of music. This is my recent recording. I honestly hope I can start doing a little bit more of this. I get so few chances to do little tiny bits of it, but one neat thing is that the house painting I've been dealing with is nearly done. Like the main part of it is done. I just want them to go over the deteriorating porch that I have, because it's like rotting and stuff anyhow, and slow that down a little bit. But they can also clean up the bad paint that it has on it, and it will be sort of a final detail. So I do have my music there, but that's not all I've got. Ta-da! I have a really rough draft of the ConsoleX interface. And what you're seeing is me trying to wrestle it into shape to make it behave so that it places things in an interesting way. And remember how it said if aspect ratio... Oh, of course I do. No, I have preamplifiers. I don't have like the kind of processing you might be thinking of, though. I am not currently... Oh, you think OMG? Watch this. It makes different choices for how it arranges things, and I'm in the middle of straightening out these details and making them nice. So watch this. We can reshape it, we can stretch it around. You'll notice that as I keep changing the sizes of things, it adjusts in various ways. Some of the things I need to do, which I might do a little of today, notice that as I squish this vertically, everything starts getting tiny. And that is because I don't have another aspect ratio that will like put all of these things next to each other. Instead, I'm using the one where it scales this around, right? So if I go moving it, it's going to place everything on the screen, and hopefully any position you get, you can sort of live with it, or pick a resizing that feels good. I've made all the knobs too big, and I have too much of an angle on these angled ones. This is what I've been talking about with this the entire time. Like up at the top, you save a little vertical space because they are recessed into the interface. We're under them. So they're moving in 3D, but I'm not going to want them to be as angled as this. I'm just making it work under these conditions. And these ones on the bottom, well, these are, you're looking over them. And then the whole thing has to sort of end up being correct sizes and things. Like look at these little bands of 3 knobs here. I've just done a little work on having the compression threshold be here, and then we've got these attack, release, and ratio. And then the gate is on this side. Well, for now, this is our portrait. And again, I've made all these knobs too large so that I can try to position things appropriately. The knobs can be told to be smaller, at which point they're not going to overlap like this, but I want to arrange it in such a way that rather than just having little knobs that occupy a small space in this giant expanse. And remember that we have a further trick in store. Let's see, Airwindows Global's text is still available. Never forget that we have this on tap. Save. Haven't even needed to close the program. Open up again and boom. I'm going to go back to the gray soon. And again, this is more of a portrait look. That's more of a widescreen look. The positions and sizes of these things are what I need to work on now. That's what I'm working on today. And again, the extreme angles are not going to be a thing. However, I do have another thing up and running. See the knobs? They don't do anything yet, but those are flashing with just RMS level, which is going into this. I don't think I have a gray-green color, but if I did, I could tell it. Do you know the juice colors? There's a variety of different things that you can do if you want. Oh. I do not know whether that's a real color, but we can find out very quickly. If that is a real color, we'll see it now. Okay, khaki is not actually a green, but it is a real color. So we can do this. This stuff has not changed yet, but we're also doing the custom font, as you can see. And the idea here is to get some of this working. For instance, one possibility is to have a user angle situation, because if I quit out of this, we'll definitely do a little showing off today. If we quit out of this and change this variable to 0, hey there, cannot read your name. Oh, unknown. That's what it would be. If we do this, and we can sort of just have fun. Is there a silver? If not, I can use a texture on this, and you'll see that as well. But if I'm not mistaken, I have just built the new version. I changed skew from 0.5, which is the maximum amount of visual tilt I have on those knobs. And now the tilt is literally 0. So this might be a situation where I should work on the positioning of all these things, but without the heavy 3D effect, things are positioned a little more manageably. Oh, I can change the font. Give me a second. I honestly don't think I have this font. but we'll see. I do. How'd you like that one? Don't know if I have Bauhaus, but I can find out. You know, there's a funny joke. Alrighty, and I'll go back to Yoast. It's my default. Black looks weird. I'll tell you that right now, but I do let you set black. What you get if you do black is literally this. So you can see the ones that have color-coded knobs a little bit better. And then the knobs that aren't color-coded, you can only see them in the highlight. Oh, I have. This is it. You get to have this. Let's expand and reshuffle it around a little bit. How about? So one thing I have to do is adjust these so that they don't stretch down quite as far here. And the labels for these don't show, and the entire bottom part of the fader is now not showing off the bottom of the screen. But that's because I made all of the knobs be like as large as they possibly could be, which is what you see when you squish it together so tightly that knobs overlap each other. So one of the things I need to do is stop the knobs from overlapping each other. And I'll be working on that today. Oh, and also, when it's black, you really can see the blinking lights easier. But what I'm going to be wanting to do when I have these blinking lights, you see I have them associated with threshold for the compressor and the gate. So I'm going to have the, well, I mean, it's hard, but I am patient and I have gotten through it. This is actually working. I think many people will not want this, but that's the point. You get to have this. We'll go even harder than that. Check this out. All I got to do is go into Documents, Airwindows folder, and let's find some kind of graphic that's a near black graphic. Not that one. Not that one. That's very pretty, but we're not going to use it. Something that's cool but is also a black. That's not even dark. I don't know why they call it charcoal fabric. Tried this one earlier, it did work. There's a black granite look. Ooh, charred timber, that might be good. Let's keep looking. That's got light things that are going to distract from all the knobs. When the texture has too much detail, it's not going to be helpful. Ooh, big old watercolor background, that's pretty. You say this one, and I did not notice. Do you mean the granite, or do you mean the charred timber? Those are both black. Because I have somebody here, and you're interested in seeing what it can do, so this is a fine time to show it off. It will indeed show you things. Tell me, granite or timber? Granite. Got it. And that's not actually black, but the colors aren't the best with literal black, because then you have everything really gets lost when you just plain have black. We go. This can be any color at this point. Could be red for all the difference it would make, because it will do the blending colors from the texture. And then I'm trying to think of whether I can do in all caps. Jupiter is an all caps font. We'll see what that looks like. And since we have a black theme, let's make the LEDs blink in blue. And I don't actually have to, oh, and we could also make it, nah, meter's fine the way it is. Save. And then the next time we open, how's that, huh? So I got to work on all of this kind of stuff so that the things position appropriately. You will also notice that the background texture does not scroll with the rest of the thing. That's not how this works. But you can start it up in its default size and then take a screenshot, color in the screenshot with whatever textures you want, use that, and then if it starts up with the same thing in the same size, then it will kind of match for that. But yeah, this is called customization. This is called having it your way and being able to do what you want with not only this, but all of the plugins. Because, as you can see, Airwindows Meter also takes exactly the same colors and shadings and fonts. All of my stuff will coordinate. So you come up with your own look for it, supply your own textures because I'm not going to supply them. Figure out what font you want. If you don't have the font, like I can misspell this and it will just go to a default font. And you get to do what you like with it. And I don't have to ship it this way because it's for you to do. But the thing that I have remaining is to put it back to its beginning position. And then, oh, I know, people are going to lose their minds. You were first to see this. I didn't have this yesterday. I was just beginning to make it. Pfft, you were evil, Antrave. Yes, I will. And I'm trying to figure out if I have a really stupid looking texture to use. I don't seem to have that window open anymore. Oh, I didn't run it, so you didn't see the blue light. Well, you will see it now. The horror, the horror. Oh, wrong thing. You saw that that was red. I did tell it to be red. But don't, the horror. Oh, hang on. That's not, I must have gotten rid of Comic Sans. Okay. I got rid of Comic Sans. But there is another thing where I do have a thing in here where if you tell it to tint the thing, whether it be a texture or a solid color, with the track color, it will shade the thing with the track color. So you could tell it to be 100% track color, in which case a red colored track in Reaper. That's all. I think it only knows how to do Reaper. But if somebody tells me how to get other track colors in other programs and actually makes it work, I would incorporate it into the mainline release. But yeah, you can color code these things in Reaper by using the Reaper track colors and decide how much of it you want. See, it says user track color amount 0.5, so it'll take the base color. We're going to return to normalcy in my default. Because part of this is also you have such a wide range of choices that it's quite happy to do stuff that is ugly and broken. Because I'm not your mom and I'm not going to stop you. But I do want to make it act nice for the defaults, and we're sort of looking at this now. So I can be done with that for the moment. People can be impressed enough by the knobs without realizing that it goes full tilt bonkers as soon as you start using Airwindows globals, and it will apply it to meter and anything else that I do like this. I can easily see doing more of these things. That could be fun. But I do want to finish up some of these details. So we're going to quit out of here for the moment. Let's go back to the maximum skew thing for fiddling with some of this stuff just a bit more. In particular, I think I need to have that engaged because my skew alterations are having an effect on the panels. Well, as you can see, when I do actually end up going for a GUI, oh yeah, it will, yes. This is only the GUI. I have the actual audio plugins, and I have started working with them and done a little mixing with them. That's what I have my control surface for, the control surface that, actually, you can't see that, but you can see the modular. I have a cool thing I need to do, actually. Check this out. I have been buying stuff from Thonk in the UK. Thonk sells kits. Here's the thing which I got, which I had to buy, because I'm not a big enough deal for people to send me stuff. But I bought this because I know I can build it. It is a Neutral Labs Scrooge, and this is going to be my clock. It's going to be my clock and drums for doing like stuff like my Welcome to Free Luna album. I feel like I can do cool things using that. Especially since it has this feature that I'm very excited about. You can have it run and be your clock for you. And there is a clock output. And then you also get to be making the Scrooge things fire off. They're sort of weird little CMOS drum noises. I figure I'm going to do that, and I may very well also like play real drums along with things and just have this whole smorgasbord of all kinds of stuff going on. But the clock output for the Scrooge is capable of going like 16th notes or 4 times 16th notes. And if I run that into some dope for clock dividers and things, I get to make really fun stuff happen. Like, I get to do really strange odd time things with it. And I get to pump the outputs of those things into clock multipliers and so on. And just the reality of what timing can mean with this system could get really off the hook. And I always enjoy that. I'm going to be looking forward to playing with that. Although the system I'm looking at is honestly, like, I have multiple modular things that I've built over the years. And the one on the top when I make videos, which is farther back in the room, that's the one that has lots of non-Scrooge, non-CMOS percussion stuff, some of which I used on the Welcome to Free Luna album. And that's also where I have my most interesting rhythmic tricks. And I basically set that one up so that it is dedicated to the purpose of me playing. Here, listen closely to this. So I have a drum practice pad that is actually this little stool. It's just a really cheap drum stool. And then I have a shelf thingy sort of braced off of it. Well, if I hit the shelf thingy with a stick and put a piezo pickup on it, which I've got a piezo pickup on it, I can run that into the modular and clock things off of a human clock input. And I'm kind of excited at the prospects of that. That's the opposite of having the synthesizers run all of their own stuff and have a machine tempo. Instead, it's like sit down, play something on a guitar, track it into Reaper, and then either run the piezo thing directly into a electronic thing or track real drums over it, or run it into a clock which is driving a combination of electronic things. Like I can run a human clock into something that plays a kick drum once every 4 beats and plays a hi-hat at the tempo that the click is coming in, except for that I'm also doing a clock multiplier, which is causing it to do a 7/4 tempo that it can switch in and out of and run like a hi-hat or whatever, but I would just have to play steadily along with the beat of whatever the human performance is I'm following. And it will sort of fill in both the electronic hat and also whatever weird thing I can make the modular timing stuff do. And that's just going to be a bunch of fun. That's going to be very interesting. Oh yeah, no, the thing about getting into modular is very similar to if you dive really deep into plugins or get into some of the things that are software things like that. For instance, there is a little DAW called Bespoke, which I've used before, and it's actually quite fun. It's very much like modular, except for that it's not and of course VCV Rack. Not to forget VCV Rack. VCV Rack acts like it is a analog modular synthesizer. Bespoke is without that conceit. What Bespoke does is it just draws little boxes like in this sort of matrixy way, and you connect them back and forth, different nodes connecting to different things. And it's as much like a modular synthesizer, if not maybe a little bit more so. Back in the day, I was making videos based on that and came up with a way of being able to sort of green screen it or blue screen it. Technically what I did was I black screened it, is that I caused everything that was literal black to be replaced by the background camera. And so all of these little things as part of the Bespoke interface just floated in the air over the camera's feed. It was very neat. Hey Grants. Oh Grants, did you notice the thing that I did? Did you just arrive? Watch this. And then we're going to continue working on it. It lives. I just need to adjust it. You will also notice that we are changing aspect ratios on the fly. So what I need to do is things like make these knobs not overlap, make all of the knobs not be too big. They are all expanding outwards as large as they can. We've got our colors. We've got the sliders have LEDs built into them. And everything is basically coming together. I got to sleep at a fairly reasonable hour, and I did make dinner, and I had dinner. See, after dinner, I knew what I needed to do, so I just scrambled and did all of this. And now what I'm doing is I figure in the next, looks like an hour and 10 minutes, because I'm not going to run late again. I've done enough. I'm going to add some more options for this, and only then am I going to start shrinking these knobs down and making them not overlap. I don't want there to be huge amounts of blank empty space in here, but you can plainly see that this is not actually like the layout of this, even though it is a on-the-fly layout which is compensating and coming up with an arrangement that is attempting to be good no matter what I do to it. I need more layouts. If we do this, see, I could be making these things line up more in a row. Like I still have 3 high here. And if I do this, you can kind of see what everything is. Well, if you can if it's visible on screen. I suppose it might not be. Oh no, it still is. We start losing everything because the closest I have to this really tall aspect ratio is 3 controls wide. And when I add a 2 control wide and a 1 control wide, or 2 controls tall and 1 control tall, I'll stop getting the tininess of these as they get squished into these narrow little columns. It needs to be able to deal with, see, because it goes very weird when it's set up like this. See, the narrowness means fader and pan are now tiny. And it just needs to be closer to like this kind of aspect ratio instead. And then once I have it sorted out, including making adjustments for that so that I'm not crushing things down into being too tiny again, then I can deal with this problem, which is once we approach its largest possible size, these overlap with each other. And that is because the largest possible size for them is excessively huge. And once I have everything basically working and behaving itself a little bit, maybe kind of, sort of, at that point, I get to start adjusting the positioning of all of these elements within each little section and shrinking down the largest size that the knobs can be until they don't overlap. Although, I mean, I could have them overlap and it'll still work. You can use these just like they are. It's just not very pleasant. And I am certainly wondering whether I want to build this in as a control. This angly stuff. Because I made these knobs so that they can look like this. So that these ones on the top can be large knobs but not taking up the full vertical space. I've just got it a little bit exaggerated. Not well. I've got a bunch of keyboards around, and I am sort of probably about 2 years of study away from being able to play on the black keys, because I've paid attention to how some of that stuff works, but I really don't have the facility with it. So yeah, so where were we at? I'm kind of interested in whether the flat triple knob set can be made to be wider than this. Because the way this works, and I don't actually get to have this, I have no way of making this squish the knobs into each other anymore. But if I go to this, then I do get to squish the knobs into each other until they overlap. That is actually a thing. But I do also, William, because I need to do all aspect ratios. You'll see. That's one of the things I'm going to be doing today. Because that's the thing. All control proportions is fine, but if I give you the ability to set the amount of like visual angling on these panels, which are on the top and are kind of overhead, or you're leaning over them, which closens them up a little bit. I think my spacing of these is actually doing okay though. But yeah, I can't use just a single layout, because if I did that, like I can switch from 3 across by 4 down, which this is. There's issues with this, but 3 across by 4 down, to 4 across by 3 down, that has now switched into, I'll continue explaining it, I know that you heard me. That's now switched into something that will fit this aspect ratio better. But I don't have another set of aspect ratios where the, so if I stretch it and then shrink it like this, what ends up happening, FC is fire compressor and SC is stone compressor. I probably have enough room to put more into that. Although, yeah, so my control surface describes it as fire threshold and fire gate threshold, stone threshold and stone gate threshold. It's the compressor and the gate, basically. If I, instead of having the GUI, went and opened up, say, let's open up the channel. I think the VS2 might actually fit. Then we have this, and this is the audio part of it. And it defaults to pretty normal. Here's all the controls. Air, fire, stone, high pass, low pass. On the channel, the high pass and low pass are made to act like the SSL version of that. And then for the thresholds, that's it's a compressor. And then we have the attack and release and so on. And we have a ratio. So this is something that might come out. If you're interested in what that's about, here's something that I might bring out this coming weekend if you're really excited about it. We can do this. See, that would have been, I think, would it have been a version of Pop? I think it must have been. Let's find out. Sure is. So this is the dynamics. No mid-side. This is the dynamics that you saw in ConsoleX. Interestingly, it feels like this is acting differently from the one that I have in ConsoleX, but I'm basically fine with that. You have your attack speed, and we've got a ratio. It's not meant to be like an 1176 all buttons in. It's meant to be a glue compressor, which it is. And then we also have the threshold the same way that ConsoleX has. Ratio. And we have sustain and release. Release can be really fast, and sustain smooths it out. And then when you slow down release, it starts acting more normally. You already have Air4. And you'll notice that the gate operates independently of the compressor. So we can do this heavy compression if we want. Or we can take out that compression. And to really take out the compression, you gotta set ratio to 0. And then you can use ratio on the gate as well. So if you're fixing to enhance that, for instance, this is how you manipulate all of those things. And it's probably worth learning how to use this because that's what ConsoleX is going to have. Although granted, there was a sort of liveliness in the threshold here, which is not actually happening in ConsoleX, and I'm not entirely sure why. And then again, ratio of the gate means you can have that enhancement of the dynamic spikes independently. You can just be full compression or full gate or gate and no compression. Oh, alcoholic audio, I will let you go to bed in an hour. Or you can be good and go to bed now. So if you want Pop 3 this upcoming weekend, that could be fun. I can give you that. It'll help you practice for what ConsoleX does because, again, this is only the channel version of this. And same deal, except for we have, let's see, gate threshold. Fire gate release. Note, however, we have stone completely separate. So that lets you bring in the stone band separately. And then we can go into the compression. And now we are compressing the stone band. And it works the same way that the Pop 3 did, but in the middle of Stonefire. And then rather than having it be an incomprehensible pile of sliders, I need to make it look like this. And this is how we do. This is how we do. So my job now, in the next hour before dinner time, and I'm going to rest up tomorrow because all of the stuff that I had to deal with getting the house painted has been really extremely exhausting. Like being a nerdy person with autism and having people scraping and banging on the outside of your house for 6 hours straight, not the funnest thing in the world. But yeah, we've got a bunch of updating to do here, and again, I need to make new aspect ratios because, as you can see, this is a aspect ratio 3 columns and 4 rows. So if I smush it, it has to make all of the knobs too little. I do not believe it will be possible to sidechain with this. I have no intention of trying to add that. There's enough to this already, and I don't honestly know how to do that. So I need to come up with some more arrangements that are maybe like 2 columns wide or 1 column wide so that you can squish it like this and it'll look like a channel strip. But I do have 2 aspect ratios built into this now. So we've got 3 columns wide and 4 columns wide. And I have the meter that goes to ConsoleX channel and bus. So that tells you things similar to what Airwindows meter does, but in a more mix-friendly thing, so that you don't get all fussed up about making the charts and dots go a certain way. Instead, it gives you a rough idea of what is happening. And I've reversed the colors so that with this one, let's see if I have if I can freeze it. So you see this purple color, and if it can go to a red color, it means it's darker, because it works better for me to use red and purple in this particular meter. And then if the blue color, which means the same as the blue dots, if the blue color lights up to a cyan color or goes to green, that means it's brighter, because the cyan color is close to white visually. And it means that bright sounds seem to, like, I'll start it over again. No symbol? Well, barely symbols. So you see the red colors. And the hats are over on this side, so you see green, you see cyan. And my snare is fairly bright, so it's making these cyan green sparks up here. And when you have bright sounds combining with the, yeah, it's just strictly just a jam. I just made this up in the course of about 5 minutes, recorded it. First take of literally everything, and it was just listening to the guitar and jamming along with bass and then with drums. But you can see that the percussion, drums and things, are lighting this up in a sort of green color, and that's the idea. So if you have your mixes, or the mixes you're talking about, maybe it's not yours, the funk jazz with the mixes that sound really cold, they will be a bright green color. I can even show you that, but not with exactly that. Instead, we'll fire up this thing, which lets me show this. And then I can also turn on something where I can boost the brightness. This is the thing that you've already got pieces of. You've got zoom, you've got dark FN ratio as Air 4, you've got the airband in Air 4, and basically most of this. And in due time, the actual plugin can come up, but I have a lot to do first. And you're talking about mixes sounding really cold. Oh, here we go. So this is a lot more high frequencies. I just boosted the treble a lot. And this is really cold. And if it's really cold, you see these green things here. And if instead it's really bassy, well, then we can see reds and purples up here, and we have a very bassy take on things. Or a very mid-rangey take will show blues a fair bit. make it really loud, then the color goes out to the outside edge. And we do all that kind of stuff. And I think people are going to be excited when they finally get their hands on this. As anybody who's following me knows, it's been a lot of long, patient work to do all these things. So let's jump in and see if we can do one additional thing. Or maybe a couple of, let's make 2 more aspect ratios. Like technically we only have 4 more to make, but we only have 2 so far. So we need to make a couple of more. And I'll call that good enough for today. And this is how we would do that. How I would do that, I guess, is you'd have to say, oh, please give me control over my mouse. Hello. We're copying that, and then we are copying it all the way down to here. Paste, make a little space, and paste again. So now rather than that being 4 high and 3 wide, it becomes 6 high and 2 wide. But just calling it that isn't going to do it. And notice also that we have these things. 6 and 2. And we're going to want to figure out what the appropriate place to kick this in is. So we've got some information, I think, up here. Yeah, we do. So we went from 4 high and 3 wide to 6 high and 2 wide. And then the final one is 12 high, 1 wide. And that is the final ultimate vertical channel strip where everything has to be arranged. The way we arrange it, you can't see it, but I'll hold some of these up for you, is I just have these little cards here. And I'm moving them around on the desktop so that I can see where they line up. Maybe I can show? Probably not. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that. I need to know what I'm doing. You don't need to know what I'm doing. So I arrange the cards kind of like this. So in this 4 high by 3 wide, I have got all of the tone controls going down the side. Oh, you can feel better for me because I didn't have to paint. It just cost me a cajillion dollars, and that was ridiculous. But it desperately needed doing. And hopefully I'll go for another 10 years or so, saving up money to be able to paint again. It's all good. It works out. So what I'm doing that you can't see is lining these things up on my desktop, 12 little cards with stuff drawn on them. I just showed you one of them, or 2 of them. And what I've done is rearrange these things. You'll see it soon enough, but I have to arrange the cards and then I have to update the code to reflect what I've done. And what they're going to say is, instead of the, because I want to keep the fader like bottom right at all times. It seems to me as if that's an appropriate location for the fader to go. You always know where to reach. Everything else jumps around like crazy. And so one of the things I'm doing is I am making a point of keeping all the tone controls in a line. Wherever they go, they always end up in a line. And you look for them by color. You look for them by the treble controls is this little triangle of red colored controls. Then there's the high mids, that's a triangle of green. Then there's blue, then there's brown. When I do the 12 by 1, I'm going to get as close as I can to the way SSL actually lays out a channel strip. But everything that combines it differently, I have to make something up. So here's where we go now. And I am a little skeptical as to what I can even make be. I think I can go to the 3 high arrangement of offsets and panel tilts and skews. And I have that down here. See these areas? This is a big area with 4 controls wide. Then there's this area, and then there's this area. So what I'm going to be doing is basically the same thing, except for it steps down on the y-axis more. And I bet I can do this before 5. Although, come to think of it, give me a second. I just noticed it's 4. It is taco night. It's Thursday. So I get to turn on my stove, which will get this place a little bit warmer. I'm going through firewood like anything. And, and defrost the cheese I put in my tacos. So I'll be right back. Okay, back. There we go. I'm always thawing out a lot of Monterey Jack cheese for my tacos because I'm a big fan of that. The only way that would stop is if certain weird things going on in my country right now result in a bizarre man being given control of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, doing weird, creepy things like banning pasteurization because he's a raw milk fan. And I think if that happens, and I wouldn't rule it out, it is a dead giveaway that skullduggery is afoot. But more will be revealed there. Funny thing about that man has publicly criticized the president-elect and scolded him for having a bad diet. If he doesn't get, deleted, thrown away for having the effrontery of scolding the president-elect for that reason, skullduggery is definitely afoot. Because much like walking into Mar-a-Lago and having Elon Musk get as big of a round of applause, there's another person who, if they don't get fired, then skullduggery is afoot. Somebody else is in charge. But enough about that for the moment. This is November 14th of 2024. Anybody in the future who's fascinated by the insanity of history as it unfolds. We're going to do the insanity of code. Well, I mean, these are canonically interesting times. Let's just say that. One of the things that I get to do is focus on this stuff because I have things that I can help people with that don't involve me running around being a big political blowhard. And I honestly think it is, if you are not already a big political blowhard, it's a good time not to be one. Like, just take care of your community. Believe me, there will be enough to do along those lines. Oh, Alex. Oh, my sweet summer child, as they say. Keep a close eye on us is all I can say. Things are going to be really weird. And those of us who are in the USA, it's a really good time to fall back and take care of your communities. We will do the best we can. Those of us that are trying to do good things anyhow. So let's see. So here is where we need to do some of our stuff. I've got stuff rearranged. Now, rather than what we're looking at, my top layer is FCT and then TRG. I've got 6 layers rather than 4. So I got to figure that stuff out. Yeah. I don't deny the scary. We do what we can. And again, fall back on your local community. If you know, like soup kitchens or whatever, do your level best. I'm finding resources in my community that are just really basic, like community pantry kind of things. That's what I'm helping. Quite happy with that part, actually. I am happy with the people that I'm able to find ways to help. Ooh, here's one of the things that I actually need to put in place. Check this out. This needs to move up here. Because my top level, let's try to make it. My top level goes FCT and then TRG. And why is it not lining up the way? Let's try to make it tidy. So the way this works is like this. I'm having a terrible time dragging and dropping some of these things around. It's deeply frustrating. Horde Barrage, did you not see? Let's bounce back out of here just show you. Because I haven't built this yet, so it should still work. Yeah, watch this. Boop. I don't think I built, so we should still be fine. And it changes with aspect ratio. So yep, so I haven't built it, so it's not trying to go to it too wide that it's not able to do. Once I have it doing all the aspect ratios I want, then I change the size of the knobs and make it like actually fit. But for now, this is the 3x4. This is the 4x3. It's the wider one. There's going to be a 2-column. There's going to be a 2-row. I may or may not be able to, I bet I can at least get the 2-column done today. I don't know if I'm also going to be able to get the 2-row done today, but you know, these hours of work, all this kind of stuff. Go back out of here again. Because you see, this is the one I'm working on now. So we start off with fire comp and triple width, because the very top of it starts off with the compression section of the fire channel. It's stone on bottom, fire on top, 3 little sections, or 2 little sections that are compression and gating. And they are always sort of flanked by those sliders. The sliders delineate where the one section starts and the other one stops. And then there's always a section of the tone controls where either the high is on the right and the bass is on the left, or the high is on the top and the bass is on the bottom, which is how it is with a actual channel strip. And yeah, and Alex, that's why I'm doing this. Honestly, that's why I'm doing this. That's also why I'm not like sitting around being like, I'm going to be a politics streamer now. God, what a nightmare that would be. Because, there's probably times when I'll just be like, hi guys, we are doing Minecraft streaming now, and we're just talking about stuff. Because that's another way to just like share time with people. So let's see now. I have 6 of these to do. I have now done 1 of them. And all of this stuff, what's written in here, needs to be appropriately set. But at the moment it is. I haven't gotten to the point where I have to start changing it around again. I will. But let's see what we got. So what I said was we're doing them in sort of 2x2 sections with the same basic angling. Or I could use the offset Y. And I have to keep these basically in order because I'm just overriding this whole thing. That's my stove being ready, which is good. So let's see if I can think well enough to complete this. The other stuff that I did was off stream, so not engaging in conversation probably helped me a little bit. It was kind of grueling. Here's the part that I had to do. This is what was wrong the previous time. I had like 3 of these filled out. I had to fill out all of them. Literally all of them. And then I had to go back and set the default settings for all the controls too. But like FC threshold, that's the compression. So the threshold starts as 1. And you can have the ratio be 0 if you really have it not making an effect. Because if the signal goes above 0 dB, it will kick in the compressor, even if the threshold is cranked all the way. But then you set the ratio to 0 and then you have no compression. And then the gate threshold defaults to 0 because that one you have to move up in order to engage it, which is also another way of being able to see what you're doing in the UI. And here's where we are. Because the basic use of it sort of needs to be reading at a glance what parts you can do what with. Like if you don't normally have everything all gated and the gate threshold is all the way to the left and the comp threshold is all the way to the right, they go to cross each other as they start to engage. The comp threshold has to be moved to the left to take the compression output level down. And the gate threshold has to go the opposite direction to bring the gating up to louder sounds. Let me see if I can get like any of this remaining stuff. Like, here's one of the things I'm looking for. Directly beneath these 2 things is fire air and then high mids. That's going to be completely different sets of things, but fire air I can find right here. And I'm going to try to select all of the things appropriately and see, this goes here, and then there's going to be one of these offset X. There's going to be exactly one of those between each of these things. And I'm going to also have to do the offset Y part here. And here's how that goes. There'll be one of these between these 2 sections that starts with fire air, and now I have to do high mid, the frequency section for high mid. And that's literally here, so that's cool. They are kind of lining up in a similar way, and I like that part. and it's not letting me select it. It's a pain in the butt sometimes. Now we got it. So you see these have a similarity. It's a bank of stuff, and then it is offset x plus px, meaning we are stepping one over and doing another section next to it. The px and py are set to the relevant width in a 6x2 orientation. I'm not worried about that right now. It's the same EQ no matter where you access it. It's going to connect to the same places. It's just the controls are moving around in ways that are hopefully predictable enough that there's consistent parts to it. Yeah, this has like 38. So they have to be done properly. So that makes offset x be 0 again. That's correct. And one of the things that happens here is we have to do offset y equals 0, and then offset y equals py minus whatever the skew is, and then offset y is py times 2 times 3, and so on. Here's the one that says times 2. That's going to go in here. Except for I can't select it. I get frustrated with those things sometimes, but this whole thing is going to need to move up here. See, it's 0, and then it's py, which is 1 step downwards, and then py times 2, which is 2 steps downwards. And at this point, we start doing the middle 4 sections, and let's try to get all of these things sort of in order and then deal with whatever else is going on. And underneath the fire and air control is the fire gate controls. That lives here. Whole thing moves to a new place now. That's gonna involve updating some of this stuff. I'm not sure how much. I'll find out. So underneath high mid is our first appearance of fire gate, and under fire gate is low mid, and low mid is literally here. See, it says LMG knob. I want to select it evenly. Let's try to do that. And can I drag you? Yes, I can. So fire gate, and then low mid is directly next to it. Meaning I have another one of these offset x plus equals px. It's not doing any of the complicated things. It's just stepping one over. One of these between each pair. Hang on. Is this actually correct? No. Undo. No, that needs to go here. There we go. See, 2 knobs offset in between them, then another Y offset. 2 knobs offset between them, another Y offset, and 2 knobs offset between them, and then this needs to not be here anymore. Let's make a little space. So I need to have something doing all this offset stuff and doing it correctly. So let's take a moment and look at what we're looking at here. My mechanism for doing the skew stuff is just taking all of the py times whatever knob it is and adding this as needed. That's going to be the case for the top angled ones. Might want to continue. I've been coding since I was like a kid on an Apple II Plus. Basically, the whole deal with coding is you're figuring out stuff that you want to do. The details of how you do it are much more ambiguous. Let's see, copy. And since this is another bank heading down, this needs to now have this stuff added to it. Paste, skew, Paste skew. We have 3 of these. Paste skew. What I probably may very well want to do is have this not be angled quite as much. What I'm looking at right here is maximum skew for panel tilt here, and then it's about half as much of that. The offsets are going to be challenging too. Because the way that, well, I can see how they work. You will see how this goes wrong, if I'm not mistaken. You will see how it goes wrong. But bits of this are probably okay now. So here's what we're doing. Top 2 knobs, maximum skew, maximum angle. Then we've got an offset that appears to actually be correct, although I'm not totally certain of that. And we have less panel tilt. See, panel tilt is 0.5 minus skew, but now it's 0.5 minus skew times, let's call it 0.5. And then after that, we have 4 of them that are going to be flat. They're in the middle. Because these really tall, skinny ones do not benefit as much from having all this funny angled stuff. We're going to keep that to a dull roar anyhow. But I like being able to do it. I think it makes some cool visual effects if I can do it appropriately. And I do intend to include that in user settings, but it will default to something that I consider appropriate. So yeah, panel tilt, maximum tilt, panel tilt half of that, and the offset is C0, 1 py, which is the height divided by 6, then 2 py, so height divided by 6, 1 step down, then 2 steps down. And at this point, we, I think, need to take away the skew entirely and make panel tilt be exactly 0.5. And we have our small knob stuff being just native small knob. It's not being adjusted for the angle that it is. So we get to keep this just as it was. And in fact, this is another whole section. We've now done half of this narrower outline. When I do the one extremely skinny tall one, it's gonna literally be just only offset Y being incremented, and none of it is gonna be angled. So let's see. Next thing, copy. Paste, because this is where we go from here. This now has to become py times 3, not 2. See, it's counting. You see how it's counting? It goes from 0 to 1 py to 2 py's to 3 py's. This is how I am doing. In fact, I can probably make that do a much smaller adjustment, if any. Maybe I don't even want to do any. Let's try not doing any. And I'll tell you why. It makes better sense to adjust that if you have lots of things along a horizontal layout, and then the middle panel, like when it's 3 rows and like 4 columns, the middle layout can expand if you manipulate this py and have it sort of start a little bit higher so it squishes the angled ones into a smaller space. But there's no real room for doing that here. I mean, there is, but ABODC, are you the one who's keeping on asking me about the mid-side control? No, absolutely not. I've got stuff that does mid-side control. Use like wider, Airwindows wider, and or seriously, any version of seriously, but especially seriously 2 or seriously 3. That's your mid-side control. You see, do you see how many controls I have? No, it's absolutely not going to have mid-side. Let's see, where are we at? Trying to find what I was even doing. So FCR, TRG, FIR, HMG. Then the next one is FGT, the gate control of the fire band, and LM. The next one is stone compression and bass. And this is, in fact, the stone compression block. Cool. That's a start. This is not as confused as I had thought. Yeah, I don't mind answering things over and over. If you're asking them over and over just to troll me, I'll start making jokes about it or something. But yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything even remotely mid-sidey about ConsoleX, or ain't nothing remotely mid-sidey about it. I have dedicated plugins for that stuff. Those are what you should use. So let's see. Now we have 2 and then 3. We're sticking with the panel tilt of 0.5. We have not yet got into the... and newbie questions are fine. I have been a newbie for years and years and years. I'm still a bit of a newbie at this. It just looks like I know more because I was able to get stuff working, and the stuff that I'm shuffling around is now stuff I understand, kinda. GUI coding is, in fact, different, kinda, but it's still being coded in C++, and it is still finding ways that stuff does stuff, like this knob has a thing that you can make it do. Much like the audio coding says, here is your place for having a buffer. This is how you make the samples, and then you work with those. Oh no, that's my whole deal, is inventing the algorithms. The actual coding I'm miserable at. Fortunately, being bad at coding in modern parlance actually makes stuff run better sometimes. Like, people would get really cranky with me for doing it this way rather than breaking stuff up into a million different little subroutines with as few words as possible in all of them. I just do it as a giant pile of stuff, and that actually executes quicker most of the time. It just looks uglier. It looks a little overwhelming, but I've learned how to see my way through it. So let's see. Continuing to move as we talk. This is like right down to the bottom of it. And we have SCT. I'm looking at the cards on my desktop, and they have little reminders of what they are. And then the section with BSG is the one I need to move up. Didn't happen that time. Let's see if we can do it this time. Nope. You'd think that if you clicked on the thing, it would let you do something with it, but sometimes that's not even true. Nope. It's being real challenging for me. You try to figure all this stuff out, and then you get stopped by, I wasn't able to do this. I've never understood that. And now we have a section which is also panel tilt is 0.5. Just like here. They've got the offset X, meaning I do the one on the left, and then I do the one on the right, and then I step down one. And this is bass. And with these, I have to take away this part. We do not want times parenthesis 1.0 more parenthesis, and then this. This is the part that doesn't belong in this section. So this part carefully goes away. For every single one of these. For the even narrower one, it's totally gonna, all that stuff is gonna go away. If I was in another code editor, I would have an easier time just doing a sort of find and replace and taking all this stuff out by matching it. This modern version of Xcode is not as easy for me to do, so I don't. And you see these look the same as this stuff here, because the bit that I added to make it work with the angled part. Yeah, well, no, they're supposed to be super fast. That's what they're for. It's even more important with something like this where you have millions of controls and EQs and stuff, and it has to run on who knows how many channels. Because again, this is the system where I have a rebirth stuff that I've also figured out, where you can have a control surface with like colors assigned to it, and have like a kajillion guitar tracks, have them all have console channel, assign them all to a single color, and then manipulate all of them using the same fader on the fly. I was able to make that work. Mid-side Airwindows plugins. There is a plugin called Mid-Side and Edit is Dim, which will bust the left and right into a mid and side and assign them to left and right. So it rather than just adjusting levels, also I think every trim I think has mid-side. And then any seriously having dedicated mid-side control is only seriously 2 and seriously 3. Seriously 1 just does like tonal effects using the narrow filter boosts. But seriously 2 and seriously 3 added powerful mid-side boostings and things. And that's why it's more strong in its effect. So there you go. I think that's it. I think that's all of them. Where did I leave off? Setting up the bass channel. Having done that, now I need to do one of these, because these are the final batch. This is the final batch. This is going to be a copy and paste routine. So this needs to be py times 4, because it needs to continue incrementing. And then the final one has to be py times 5, which I'll get to in a moment. We don't need nearly as many of these offsets. And then having followed up the bass channel, we now need stone range, which is literally sitting right here waiting for me to use. So that's cool. And then all of these 4 that we're leading up to. So let's see. It needs to be stone range, and then next to it needs to be low pass, high pass, and discontinuity. That's actually here. So we're going to swap positions of some of these things, if indeed it lets me drag. Signs point to yes. So stone and range, and then move this up. High pass, low pass, and discontinuity is what sits to the right of stone and range. It'll make sense. You can't see anything that I'm doing, but I have these cards laid out on my table. It's how I have to do it so that I know what goes where. And then having done that, I will simply copy this, cut it rather, and paste it where this went. And SGT is in fact the one on the left for this. We don't need all these little offsets. And then fader and pan is bottom right. As always, it's always going to be bottom right. That's where you get the big fader knob. That's where you get your pan control. And it's the consistent thing. And then the thing to remember is in the orientation of stone versus fire, stone is on the bottom or the left, and fire is on the top or the right. Bass is on the bottom or the left, and treble is on the top or the right. And they are all always connected to each other. They're always in a little block. You can look for them by color, because the tone controls are all color-coded. And that's how this is supposed to work. So let's now see what we're doing here. Do we have panel tilt? Yes, we do. In fact, we have a incremental panel tilt to the point where maybe we could even, well, we only have 3 sets of them. So I could have maximum tilt, half tilt, a quarter tilt, this is me trying to figure out whether this makes any sense at all. Let's see what we can do. I've yet to actually try this, but we're not actually changing offset in any way. So if this looks bad, it looks bad. Copy. And then now, panel tilt here becomes minus skew times 0.25. And then these ones are plus. See, plus here, and then plus here, and then plus here. But it's not quite as simple as that, because this one becomes plus skew times 0.25, and then this one becomes, I'll replace this, plus skew times 5, and then this one becomes plus skew fully. And the ones on the edge, what are we doing here? Oh, I deleted the plus. Boom. And let's see, here's our offset. The Y's and X's and things seem to be correct. I do need to make sure that it has this correction in here too. That's important. I'll get to that. We've got our offset X as in every place it needs to be. We are removing this part here because it's like 6 tall. I think maybe I would prefer to have it be evenly spaced. Yeah, I don't think I really need this to be in parentheses, but in fact, I'm pretty sure I don't. So let's just take these parens out since it's a very simple math operation. I like having the parens in when it's a more complicated math operation, but it's just an equals. It's just the simplest of math operations, and so I'm going to not have it be in parens. There's no like precedence or plus or anything around here. Like this, that's a plus. So that part is actually, I think all of that is done at 2:52. 8 minutes before I need to go and have dinner, because I'm not going to get into a pushing myself way too hard in the live streaming. Just a tiny little bit left, and I'll be ready to go. So let's see. Let's see what we need. Oh, I didn't copy enough of the parens. Here we go. Copy. So 0.5 is the amount of scaling I need to do for this. And then this is smaller, so I think while I'm at it, let's punch it in so all of the ones in this section, oops, are scaled less. It's minus skew times 0.25. These are all plain. These are all plain. And these all need to be updated. So the faders and pans actually have these applied already, but these don't. Boom, paste. Goes in right here, because multiplication is commutative. Then I think this section also. Got 2 of these here and 2 of these here. So these kind of flank the middle section. So this section in the middle needs to be times 2.5, and this section in the middle is the tilt plus skew times 0.5. So the whole angling of the thing, whether people are actively using it or whether they have a control built into Airwindows globals where they say, I don't want any of my knobs to be visibly tilted, thank you. I'll let you switch that right off. And if I'm not mistaken, that is done. It should be done. And I think it is done. So let's find out what we just made. If this works, and I dearly hope this is logical and in theory should work. We're going to find out. If this works, we'll play with it a little bit and then we'll end stream. Open up our little thingy and fire up gain, which will not give us the columns of 2 yet. Here we have 4 columns. Here we have 3 columns. Notice how the stone and fire, it's the threshold, compression, the output control is this. This is how you adjust the overall loudness of it. I'm going to be moving them around a little bit eventually. And then the gate lives under that. So these are like blocks. I might end up being able to draw lines on the interface so that you can make sense of that stuff. And then we see whether it does the thing I wanted it to do. Signs point to no. What's going on? Well, I did my work for making this do its thing, so let's find out what happened. Quit. This seems okay. This is a different layout. This stuff doesn't change. This stuff should still be appropriately arranged. Aspect ratio minus 1.4. Oh! Well, shucks. Okay, so that explains something. I didn't update, see? It still says aspect ratio 0 to 1.4. I have this, but when I move it's just setting it this way and then it's overriding it with the next one. So I've still got this. In the last 3 minutes, we shall have the result of this thing. Ta-done! I know I can do it. It's this if statement. It's the same if statement both times, so it just resets it twice. The first time you don't even get to see it. So let's see. 1.4. That's between 1.8, 3H, 4W, and 1.0. What's between 1.0 and 0.41? Well, 0.4, that leaves like 6. 0.6 roughly, 0.59. I'm going to use my calculator for this because my brain is shorted out now. 0.6 divided by 2 plus our initial position of 0.41. 0.71 is halfway between 0.41 and 1. And we're going to shoot for halfway between each time. What that means is if it's larger than 0 but less than 0.71, I'll make it 0.72 just for laughs. Then we do this, which we haven't seen yet. And then if it is larger or equal to 0.72, F, less than 0.72, larger or equal to 0.72, save, build, watch this. 1 minute left for stream. I think it's going to be kind to me and work this time. Although you never can tell. I'm tempted to say if this doesn't work this time, I am going to fix it. But I bet you it worked. 4 columns, 3 columns, 2 columns. Here you go. So if you like it being a sort of horizontal thing like this, you get to have that. If you like more your portrait look, I will get it so that this is nice. And let's also see what the angle, see how we are underneath this one, but over this one, and it's set to just absolute maximum angleness. This narrower one has some of that going on still. And here is our vertical layout. See, what I was doing with the positioning was making it so that everything scooches up to fill in this space. But it might be just fine the way it is. And then I also don't have these sliders angled, but I'm cool with that. It's fine. And yeah, most angled, less angled, but still slightly angled. It's supposed to be scooched up a little bit, but all of these still need a lot of fussing and adjustment. Not angled, not angled, not angled, looking from slightly overhead, and then looking from very overhead. And then you'll be able to dial back. I might want to fuss with the positioning of all these things, because the vertical spacing of all of this can stretch out just a little bit so that this middle stuff isn't as cramped and the knobs get a little bigger. Like make a little space for it. And then the idea of this is that if you're fooling around with all of these things and coming up with ways of arranging them. So here we are with the big knobs, but then supposing you wanted to really crunch it down into a narrow space. Now I haven't done the one wide yet, but it would act like this. See how we've made it incredibly narrow, and yet you can still kind of see things. Like I can adjust this fire control. I can even adjust the air control, which is hiding right here. Even though the interface is absolutely tiny, I can still click on it and adjust it, even if my interface is ridiculously tiny. Now, if I make it be 1 wide, and we go to this ridiculous setting, all these knobs are going to be that much bigger, and the whole strip is going to be laid out vertically. But what we've got here is the whole strip is laid out vertically. I will move this stuff and figure out how to make it lay out nicer, because the whole point of this is so that this stuff that is very angled at the top, at the bottom, lets you scooch everything down to the edges so it makes more space in the middle. And you can kind of see where it says SC threshold and FG threshold. And you can click on these even though they're kind of cramped. You can click on this even though it's kind of cramped. And you can't even hit play until I move it again, but then if I have it scrunched down this small, the lights of the stone threshold, the stone gate, are still blinking away just fine. So yeah, we have added a additional aspect ratio, an additional arrangement for being able to work with ConsoleX channel. You have the really narrow one, and you see how it's a little bit more squished, and then these ones are flat, and there's that 3D effect. And that's the idea with that, is being able to save space. And you can take it all the way out to here. And then, oop, 3 wide, 4 wide. The next one in the opposite direction is making it so very wide that it is 2 rows and twice as many columns. And then you'll have it laid out like extremely horizontally, like this. And then if you do that, you can have as many as like 12 controls all in a row, and the meter is extra wide then. And then you still have access to all the controls, because like right now, you probably can't see it, but I am in fact adjusting one of those tiny controls, but you can't read what it says. Similarly here, I can adjust the threshold control of this, but you can't really see any of it. And that's because this is still 3 controls tall, but it needs to go to 2 controls tall, then 1 control tall, and then it'll all fit a little bit better. Although there'll still be these little blocks with like high mid here, and then your tiny reso and your tiny frequency. And on the wide 1 tall arrangement, there will be none of this tilting. It'll all be flat. All be flat like this. And in fact, I think on the 2 tall, it's also going to be flat, because I don't honestly see, well, it could be flat, or it could be literally everything it's just a wedge facing in, so that all of the vertical space is optimized that way. That could work, because yeah, I know it's dinner time. I'll be good, I promise. And that would make it so that if you widen it super wide like this, you can have the controls be taking up more space in the interface rather than always turning to tiny dots. And yeah. Time to enjoy my taco dinner. I think I have pretty well earned it, because that was cool. I will continue doing these things, and once I've finished with all of this stuff, and there's a lot more to go to it, like don't expect the sizes and placements of all those to be exactly the way that you see them, because it needs to be polished and polished and polished and polished until it's nice. But the neat thing about that is, if I polish the placement of those things, it'll work in every aspect ratio. It's much like the tilt stuff that I built. I built the tilt stuff so that you can go to those extreme settings, but then if you do a smaller amount, it's fine. You can do the smaller amount of the tilt stuff, and it'll just adjust on the fly. You dial in the amount of it that you want, and then it will apply that to every aspect ratio that it needs to apply to. So yeah, when Airwindows gets into GUI, we're not messing around. You know, I have another plugin developer who has moved into my town. There's going to be 2 plugin developers living in Bellows Falls. I'm not making this up. And he's a pretty cool guy. He does extremely visual synthesizers. Maybe he'll show up in one of my live streams one day. I will tell you who it is. No, there's not going to be a showdown. We're going to be friends. But maybe I'll get to have jam sessions. We'll see. We'll see. So it is going to, Bellows Falls is going to become the town with the highest per capita of plugin developers in the world. And with that, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.